Well, let me start off with a question. Back to Abigail's discussion, you had a unique model there with the customer at the center and talked about the present grid and the challenges that we may pose with our current model. So I open it up to the group here. What are your thoughts about that? Customer at the center, we've got utilities investing in their infrastructure. Is that the way it should happen going forward, or do we have some things that could work together here? Whoever wants to start?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how this works. Excellent. So I would say that we... No?
No? Okay.
Good?
Should be okay.
I'm twice as effective if I have both mics. I think, I think we do start with the customer first, but we know we have a long way to go. And it's fascinating when you see all the work that's happening in the marketplace, when you see what cities and towns are doing across our different territories. The energy discussion continues to be a lot more lively and cool, if you will, than it ever has before. So I'm excited to re-engage with our customers much more deeply than we have in the past. And we're doing a number of programs now, and it's just fascinating to me when we have conversations with our customers about energy, how much they don't understand. It is magic that the lights come off. It is magic that the heat turns on. And it's only when you have that life event where you have to change out your boiler or change out parts of your home that you actually start to think about energy, or if it's not there. So I think the more we can engage with our customers, that obviously the better off it's going to be.
Just to add to that, I think that when we just think about putting the consumer at the center of the grid and what that means for our future, we're thinking about all of the resources that we have as consumers that we can offer back to the grid that are in stark juxtaposition to the resources that utilities are historically investing in, like poles and wires and feeders and substations. But on the customer side, we have a lot of services or resources that can do a lot of the same things, or they provide the same end result as metal infrastructure. Things like energy efficiency, demand response, distributed generation. We could have automated appliances. And Rhode Island is actually, in partnership with National Grid, exploring it and doing a pilot project to understand how this can work better. In our Tiverton and Little Compton area of the state, which is on the east part of the state, there's a constrained load pocket where demand is growing faster, much faster than the rest of the state. And National Grid, working together with the Office of Energy Resources, are exploring how we can use energy efficiency from both commercial and residential customers and demand response in order to reduce peak demand in that geographically targeted area and avoid having to build a new feeder, and at the same time delivering the added benefits of energy efficiency to its customers. The Office of Energy Resources came in and said, let's explore how we can use solar to further decrease peak demand in this area. So I think that it's, this is a small state in a small pilot, but it's taking that idea to the regional level and having our utilities be full partners in that sort of planning and thinking about what we can all offer to the grid and looking at different ways of meeting our energy needs.
In Boston, we have excellent relationships with our utilities, with National Grid and NSTAR, but we sometimes say to them, they have customers, but we have constituents. And as I've indicated, we try to give a very big picture of all the benefits that are available through climate action and energy efficiency, but then take advantage of our partnership with the utilities and the excellent programs that we have in Massachusetts to say that an immediate and effective way of putting all of these concerns and all of these possibilities into action is to take advantage of the customer-based programs that the utilities offer.
Maybe just one sort of additional perspective on this. I think I think we all agree, a vision like this is extremely desirable, and I think the world in general is moving into empowering individuals to take control. But I think the reality starts with very fundamental educational needs that we have. Just, we run sort of a marketplace similar to what I described at energy.com nationally. And one of the things we learned over testing it out is that the vast majority of people have no concept of what energy efficiency even means. They can't tell the difference between electricity cost, power consumption, and efficiency. It's all the same thing to them. And sort of the whole notion of getting actively engaged in improving these things is very desirable, but I think the first step is to make it tangible that any action you can take as a consumer can even have a contribution and an effect. And I think it's sort of baby step time when you think about it in a communication sense. So I think just saying that these two things need to be aligned, and I think as long as the general public is not ready to really understand it, I think we're pretty happy to have utilities so we can just switch on the light and be warm and things like that. So I think it's a combination of both.
Well, Matthias, you bring up an interesting point when you talk about making it tangible for the customers. I'd be curious to hear what the other three have to say about the closed-loop marketing and what you had to show there. What's your thoughts on that? Is that something that folks think is viable down the road, or have you seen that before, or how would it fit into your respective worlds?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll go first. I think it was a fascinating presentation, that technology, other technology that's out there. And it's not even technology, it's just information. And I was struck by the fact that I didn't pick this up during my remarks, but I've got this fitness bracelet on my wrist, right? It's not all that sophisticated. It tells me how I sleep, whether it's sound sleep or active sleep, and it also tells me how many steps I'm taking. So it's something that I've personally chosen as a customer to get information, or as a consumer to get information to make myself more healthy. If we had something similar within the energy industry and we gave customers information that they could then use in their own ways, that's what I think is going to be most impactful. Then that'll start the dialogue. That'll start making you think about how you're using energy, when you're using energy. And I thought the software feedback loop with the buying of the refrigerator and getting an email that says, this is what it's going to mean. Many times we hear from our customers, I did all that energy efficiency stuff, but I didn't see it in my bill because I had to wait till the next heating season. And by then you forgot what you paid the year before. So how do we actually get access to that information? Not that we're all going to become economists, but we are going to be at least much more informed about how energy is used.
It's another terrific tool. I think, and we should certainly take advantage of approaches like that. Since communication is a very important aspect of this, and education, as the others have indicated, we have to approach it in many different ways. And I think that's a key thing that I've learned over the past few years. I mean, even though we always talk about how do we communicate this and how do we communicate that most effectively, it seems to me that the answer is that there is no one answer. We have to do it in lots of different ways. Different people will ask for different types of tools and different types of information. And so the greater variety that we have, the better.
I would say Marion is always reinforcing the idea that we need to get the same message from multiple trusted sources. And so I thought that the image of the Visa card with the National Grid logo and linking up this closed loop purchasing system with the utility, and it was, you said, maybe it was just a passing comment, but you said people trust the utility. And we've been having a lot of conversations about this. So to hear it from somebody who's not a Rhode Islander,
not yet.
It was very interesting. But I like that idea that this is a service offering that's not actually in the utilities, sort of market line, but it's linked up with the utilities programs. You're working together to achieve the result that we want, which is that the consumer buys the most efficient product. So I thought that was really interesting.
Well, let's open it to the audience. 4 interesting presentations here, topics. Do we have some questions out there? Right in the center, please. The mic's coming.
Hi, just a quick question about, people have touched on the energy illiteracy of the general population. It's a word we used to use when I was in the wind energy field. not meant to be pejorative, but just recognizing reality. Given that, given what's going on, for example, in Western Massachusetts, there's a pipeline proposed. People have been anti-wind, anti-solar, anti-nuclear, and now virulently anti-pipeline. How do you connect the dots with energy efficiency, energy illiteracy, and real, people have just had it with the whole fossil fuel thing. I mean, this whole element of, how do you connect all those in a way that makes sense for people and also grounds them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first. I guess, you know, and I've been with National Grid for 20 years, and so I've seen this cycle. When I first started, we were very much engaged in our communities, and I think this is an industry trend. And as the years went on, utilities were not as engaged in the communities. We didn't do as good of a job of talking about energy, or just being able to establish places where people could have a conversation about energy and ask very questions about the big transmission line. What is that big line? What's that? Why are you digging up the streets? And so I think in the last couple of years, as a result of some of the storm activity, as a result of some of the industry trends and different changes, the utility, love us or hate us, we are your utility, right? So for the most part, when customers have questions, that's who they turn to. And one thing I was struck about, and I used my solar installation example, it was a state program, it was a town municipal program, and luckily, I'm in the industry and I knew different people that I could ask questions. We need to connect all of those programs so that whether I call my utility company, whether I call the state, whether I call my municipality, to Abigail's point, we're all speaking about the same value of the energy that's being installed and the benefits of installing it. So I think it's part of that ongoing dialogue that we all need to get better at. And I know some of the students here are, said they have minors in marketing, minors in communication. That's exactly what you need, because you don't need a civil engineer like me telling you how to do it. You need people that are trained professionals.
Maybe a completely different perspective. As undoubtedly everybody noted, I'm German, that's where I grew up. And Newsweek wrote about Germany once. It was sort of the greenest country by design. So my education and upbringing had a very different consciousness of energy consumption than what I encountered coming here 10 years ago. So it's just almost, I would say, a cultural difference in the awareness of using resources. And it's, when you think about, sort of where Europe is as a geography today and what it does economically, it makes a lot of sense, in terms of looking back versus in the US, everything being driven by opportunity and success, which I truly love and admire. But it comes at the cost that the consideration for preserving resources is not a natural first thought. Let's just say that. And when I think about where is the answer to the big question that you ask, I think it is something where you need to get the whole notion of preserving resources or driving up energy efficiency or being conscious about energy has to become a cultural value of quality and consensus, if that makes sense. So if you choose products, you don't compare them by the $50 rebate. It is sort of, to you, the most natural thing to do to pick the product that has the greatest savings, because we all know why this is support. And I think this is the big communications hurdle, which really affects everything on all levels, from commercial advertising to utilities to government, and it will take a long time. It's not going to happen within 5 or 10 years. So, but a 2050 scenario is one where I can think that this can change, and I think it needs to for the planet. So it's just a bigger comment on it.
Let me open up for more questions. Marion.
Do I need a microphone? I'm gonna go back to my, can you hear me?
We have one here. Oh, he's running.
Yeah, don't fall.
I'm going to go back to my concerns, the short-term concern that I have about the high and volatile energy costs, which I hate to harp on, but I know people trust the utilities when you do a great job that you're doing. When the lights go off, you come in, you put them on quickly, but people get angry at all of us when they open their bills and they're skyrocketing, and I'm really concerned that we're going to see some angry responses in the short term because we're facing this energy price crunch. And I hear it now in the debate that's going on nationally about the 111D. You know, there's a lot of Republicans who are saying this is going to cause our energy prices to go up, which I'm not going to say. There will be some positive side effects to that. But so what do we do in the short run to message together? And Ed, you and I talked about this a little bit. How can we get out in front of the needle spikes that we're going to see now and say, here's what you can do in the short run? I mean, I'm really talking about, I think this is our challenge for a year so that we don't get a backlash against all this good and innovative work that's going on.
Yes, I mean, so I would say we have to start communicating that now. And in some cases we have, but we know we need to do a better job, because the other thing people don't understand is, why does that affect me? Right? So they don't understand that there's a world market. They don't understand that there's a dynamic market. We're actually a victim of our own success as a collective industry because we've smoothed out pricing for years and years. So when they see that rise at the pump, it doesn't coincide with the rise at their bill that they got 30 days later. So there's some confusion of that basic fundamental education. And I say to my friends and family all the time, you can't control how much energy costs, but you can control how much you use. And that's why you have to take advantage of the programs that are offered and look for new and innovative ways to make sure you're making the right purchases. But I would say collectively as an industry, not just as a utility, we need to start that dialogue and that communication now, using a lot of those channels of communication that maybe we haven't relied on as much as we had in the past.
So you're saying, right, is this on? That right now, so tomorrow, we would start saying you're going to be seeing some price spikes, so this is a time to start thinking about taking advantage of your efficiency programs? Is that?
I would, yeah.
I mean, it's in some ways, it's an advantage for us. I mean, we can think about it that way for energy efficiency in the Northeast, that we do have high energy prices relative to many other parts of the state. Sometimes when I talk with my colleagues in other cities, for example, you know, and we tell them what we're doing in the city of Boston, and they start asking, well, how much it costs and how much we're saving. They say, well, that works for you because you're paying 14 cents a kilowatt hour, but we're paying, you know, 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and none of these energy efficiency programs work in the short term for us because of the price differential. So we could turn this around and start to think about it as an advantage, at least in the Northeast.
I'll let Abigail, but I definitely want to add to that.
I think
Discussion, good.
I think E&E would definitely, in this particular issue, would call for additional analysis of the potential costs and opportunities of using a more integrated approach to address this challenge that we're currently facing. But I think that it also is, you know, strikes me as such a clear opportunity for all of us, in particularly the utility and the delivery channels that you use, to reach out to those, especially the C&I customers who maybe haven't been receptive to the value proposition in the past, because now that value proposition has changed dramatically. And their actual cost-benefit analysis for the projects that may have been proposed before is now very different. So it seems like a huge opportunity to succeed with customers who haven't been responsive before, because it will be more valuable to them.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I was going to add to the previous point, and it ties to Abigail's point, the price spikes definitely get customers' attention. And we're out there every single day working with our customers, trying to help educate them. And they're getting an influx of information from various sources. And in some cases, it does prompt them to move forward. And in other cases, for whatever reasons, whether it's competing capital or what have you, they don't move forward. And that's why Michael McAteer stood up and makes an impassioned plea about other sources of funding or other sources of financing these solutions. The interesting part, and one of the other parts of the portfolio that I have, is our economic development programs. And we offer economic development programs in some of our other states. And what's interesting is when you compare the cost per kilowatt hour, we're definitely sort of at that top of the scale. But when you look at average bills, the New England states, we actually give ourselves a bad rap. And it goes back to the continuing discussion of how we communicate. We're actually, if you look at the EIA reports, we're actually in the middle of the pack. So I think we need to do a better job of communicating the total bill versus, you know, some of those hotter states that, yeah, their air conditioning load's through the roof, so they might be on a per kilowatt hour paying a lot more, but the total bill is higher, if not, you know, right around ours. So it's just another way to kind of look at it and have the conversation around energy.
Well, let me wrap up here before we go to the polling questions and thank our 4 speakers. Appreciate all your time. Appreciate your discussion.